The bridge of the UES Defiance hummed quietly as Captain Jake Morrison studied the star charts on his display. The year was 2387, and humanity had been exploring space for nearly 2 centuries. Their ship was small compared to the massive vessels that belonged to the older alien races, but Jake was proud of it. The Defiance had taken them farther from Earth than any human ship had gone before. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange energy readings about 3 light years ahead," said Tony Martinez from his position at the communication station. His fingers moved quickly across the controls as he tried to get a clearer signal. Jake turned to look at his tactical officer. "What do you think, Lisa? Worth checking out?" Lieutenant Commander Lisa Bennett pulled up the sensor data on her screen. She had been with Jake for 5 years now, and he trusted her judgment completely. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It could be a new type of star formation, or maybe some kind of ancient technology." "Ancient technology. Sounds interesting," said Dr. Amy Carter from the medical station where she was reviewing crew health reports. "We haven't found anything really exciting in months." Chief Engineer Ryan Walsh's voice came through the comm system from the engine room. "Captain, we've got plenty of fuel, and all systems are running smooth. If you want to take a look at whatever's, out there, the ship can handle it." Jake nodded and settled back in his captain's chair. "All right then. Tony, plot a course for those energy readings. Let's see what we can find." The Defiance changed direction and began moving toward the mysterious signals. None of the crew knew they were about to cross into space that the Galactic Council considered their own territory. For over 3,000 years, 5 ancient alien races had controlled most of the known galaxy. They called themselves the Galactic Council, and they believed they were the only species that mattered. The Zephyrians could read minds and communicate without speaking. The Karathi had technology so advanced it seemed like magic. The Vectar were warriors who had conquered hundreds of worlds. The Astrani could control pure energy with their thoughts. The Nixari shared a single mind across millions of bodies. Together, these 5 races had decided long ago that they were superior to all other life forms. Humans were nothing to them. Earth was just a small planet on the edge of nowhere, populated by creatures who had barely learned to leave their own solar system. The Council had noted humanity's existence in their records, but they considered humans too primitive to worry about. 3 hours later, the Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the source of the energy readings. What they found made everyone on the bridge stop and stare. "Holy cow," whispered Tony Martinez. Spread out before them was the largest fleet of spaceships any human had ever seen. There were over 200 vessels arranged in perfect formation. The smallest ships were twice the size of the Defiance, and the largest was a massive dreadnought that could have held their entire ship in its cargo bay. "Captain," Lisa's voice was tight with concern, "those ships are not in our database. The technology readings are off the charts. These are definitely not human vessels." Jake felt his heart start beating faster, but he kept his voice calm. "Tony, are they trying to communicate with us?" Before Tony could answer, the main view screen flickered to life. The image that appeared made several crew members gasp. It was clearly not human. The creature had 4 arms, gray skin covered in scales, and yellow eyes that seemed to glow. When it spoke, the ship's computer translated its words into English. "Primitive vessel, you have entered territory claimed by the Galactic Council. I am High Admiral Zekhan of the Vectar Fleet. You will identify yourself immediately." Jake stood up slowly. He had trained for first contact situations, but nothing had prepared him for this. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth, Ship Defiance. We're on a peaceful exploration mission. We didn't know this area was claimed by anyone." The alien's expression showed what could only be amusement. "Humans, we have heard of your species. You have barely learned to crawl between the stars, yet you dare to venture into our domain." Other alien faces appeared on smaller screens around the main display. Jake could see representatives of different species, all looking at him with the same expression of superiority. One had blue skin and large black eyes. Another seemed to be made of living crystal. A fourth looked almost like a human, except for the fact that its skin glowed with inner light. Your species will withdraw immediately to your home system, continued High Admiral Zekhan. You are not advanced enough to travel in space controlled by your betters. This is your only warning. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He had spent his entire adult life exploring space, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. No one had the right to tell humanity where they could and couldn't go. With respect, Admiral, space doesn't belong to anyone, Jake said firmly. Humanity has every right to explore the galaxy. We're not here to cause trouble, but we're not going to run away either. The alien admiral's yellow eyes narrowed. The other council members began talking among themselves in languages the computer couldn't translate. Finally, Zekhan spoke again. You find our warning amusing, primitive creature? Perhaps you need a demonstration of why the council rules this galaxy. The view screen switched to show the space around the Defiance. Jake watched in horror as several of the alien ships fired their weapons at a nearby asteroid field. The asteroids, some as large as mountains, simply vanished in flashes of brilliant light. The weapons were so powerful they left nothing behind, not even dust. That could be your ship, human, said Zekhan. That could be your entire world. The Council has destroyed species more advanced than yours for showing less disrespect than you have shown today. Lisa moved closer to Jake's chair. Captain, she whispered, we need to get out of here. That fleet could destroy us without even trying. But Jake shook his head. Something inside him refused to back down. Maybe it was human stubbornness, or maybe it was the knowledge that if he ran now, humanity would always be seen as weak by these aliens. I understand your power, Admiral, Jake said loudly enough for the alien to hear. But understanding your strength doesn't change what's right. Humanity won't be bullied into staying home. We have as much right to be here as you do. The silence that followed Jake's words seemed to last forever. Finally, High Admiral Zekhan began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. Fascinating, the alien said. It has been centuries since we encountered such foolish bravery. Very well, human. Since you refuse to leave peacefully, we will remove you by force. But we will do it slowly, so that your final moments can serve as a lesson to any other primitives who might consider defying the Council. The alien ships began moving into attack formation around the Defiance. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Amy Carter looked frightened but determined. Tony Martinez was already working to boost their communications in case they needed to send a message to Earth. Lisa Bennett was running diagnostics on their weapons, even though everyone knew they were no match for what they faced. Well, people, Jake said quietly, it looks like we're about to make history, one way or another. High Admiral Zekhan watched the small human ship with satisfaction. The Defiance looked pathetic compared to his massive fleet. He had decided to destroy the vessel slowly, piece by piece, so that other primitive species would learn what happened when they defied the Council. Begin the demonstration, he ordered his weapons officer. Target their engines first. I want them crippled but alive long enough to regret their foolishness. The first blast from the Vectar flagship struck the rear of the Defiance like a hammer. The entire ship shook violently, and sparks flew from control panels across the bridge. Jake gripped his captain's chair as the lights flickered. Hull breach in Section 7, Lisa reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. We've lost 20% of our main engines. Shields are down to 60%, added Tony from the communications station. That was just a warning shot, Captain. If they had wanted to destroy us, we'd already be dead. In the engine room, Ryan Walsh was moving quickly between damaged systems. Smoke filled the air, and warning alarms blared from every direction. But, instead of panicking, his mind was already working on solutions. Computer, show me power distribution patterns, he called out while pulling damaged cables from a control panel. The display showed him exactly what he needed to see. The aliens had hit them with a weapon designed to overload their main systems, but there were backup pathways they probably didn't know about. Ryan's hands moved fast as he began rerouting power through systems that weren't meant to handle it. He connected the emergency lighting grid to the shield generators and tied the life support backup batteries into the engine controls. It was crazy and dangerous, but it might give them a few more minutes. On the bridge, Dr. Amy Carter was studying the sensor readings from the alien attack. As the ship's medical officer, she usually dealt with injuries and illnesses, but her training included analyzing different types of radiation and energy. "Captain," she said suddenly, "their weapons have a very specific energy signature. It's powerful, but it follows a predictable pattern. They're using the same frequency every time they fire." Jake looked at her with interest. "What does that mean for us?" "It means their technology is very advanced, but it's also very rigid," Amy explained. "They've perfected their weapons so much that they can't change how they work. It's like they've built the perfect hammer, but they can only hit nails with it." Another blast hit the Defiance, this time targeting their communications array. The ship shuddered again, and more systems went offline. But Ryan's modifications were working. Instead of losing power completely, the backup systems kicked in and kept the ship running. High Admiral Zekhan frowned as he watched the human vessel continue to function. His weapons officer looked confused. "Admiral, their ship should have lost power by now," the officer reported. "Our weapons are designed to cascade through their primary systems and shut them down completely. Then increase power and fire again," Zekhan ordered. "These primitives clearly have some kind of backup systems we didn't account for." The third attack was stronger, targeting the Defiance's weapon systems. But this time, Lisa was ready. She had been watching the pattern of the alien attacks and noticed something important. "Captain, they're firing at exactly the same intervals," she said quickly. 12 seconds between each shot, always from the same angle. "It's like they're following a training manual." Jake nodded. "Can we use that?" "Maybe," Lisa replied. "If we change our position at exactly the right moment, we might be able to make their next shot miss." "Do it," Jake ordered. Lisa fired the ship's maneuvering thrusters just as the fourth alien blast was launched. The energy beam passed harmlessly by the Defiance's starboard side. For the first time since the battle began, the human ship had avoided taking damage. On the Vectar flagship, confusion was spreading. The weapons officer checked his instruments twice before reporting to the admiral. "Sir, we missed. I don't understand how that's possible. Our targeting systems are perfect." Zekhan's yellow eyes narrowed. "Fire again, and this time use a spread pattern. They cannot dodge multiple beams." But the humans were learning. Tony had been listening to the alien communications and was starting to understand their tactics. "Captain, they're talking about using multiple weapons now. I think we made them angry." "Good," Jake replied. "Angry people make mistakes. Ryan, how are we doing down there?" Ryan's voice came through the comm system, slightly out of breath. "I've got the ship running on systems that weren't designed to work together, but it's holding. The problem is, I don't think our shields can take many more hits." "Then we need to make sure they don't hit us," Jake said. He was starting to form a plan, but it was risky. "Lisa, those alien ships are arranged in a perfect formation, right?" "Yes, sir. It's like a textbook military formation. Very organized and very predictable." "What if we stop trying to fight like they expect us to?" Jake asked. "What if we threw out everything we know about proper space combat?" Amy looked up from her medical station. "What do you mean, Captain?" "I mean, what if we stopped acting like a military vessel and started acting like, I don't know, like a scared animal? Something unpredictable and desperate?" The next alien attack came from 3 different ships at once, but instead of trying to dodge in a logical pattern, Lisa fired the thrusters randomly. She spun the ship, rolled it sideways, and changed direction without any apparent plan. To trained military minds, it looked like panic. But it worked. 2 of the 3 energy beams missed completely. The third only grazed their shields. High Admiral Zekhan stood up from his command chair. This was impossible. His fleet had destroyed thousands of enemy vessels using these same tactics. How was one primitive ship avoiding destruction? "All ships, target the human vessel," he commanded. "I want that ship reduced to atoms." But as more council ships joined the attack, something strange happened. The Defiance became harder to hit, not easier. Jake had ordered his crew to abandon everything they knew about proper space combat. Instead of following rules and procedures, they were improvising. Ryan was routing power through systems in ways that made no sense to alien engineers. Lisa was flying the ship like she was drunk, weaving between energy beams in patterns that seemed random but somehow worked. Tony was jamming the alien communications by broadcasting old Earth music at high volume, confusing their coordination. Dr. Amy was using her medical scanners to analyze the alien weapon signatures in real time, calling out warnings about incoming attacks based on energy buildup patterns that the aliens didn't realize they were giving away. Their weapons charge for exactly 2.3 seconds before firing, she reported. And they always target the center of mass first. Then we won't be in the center when they fire, Jake replied. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Galactic Council fleet was struggling to destroy a single enemy ship. The aliens had become so used to their superiority that they had forgotten how to adapt when things didn't go according to plan. The Defiance was still taking damage. Sections of the ship were venting atmosphere, and several systems were completely offline. But they were still alive, still fighting, and still refusing to surrender. And in the depths of space, other species were beginning to take notice of the impossible battle taking place. Jake Morrison stared at the tactical display as another alien energy beam barely missed their ship. They had been fighting for over an hour now, and somehow the Defiance was still in one piece. But Jake knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They needed to do something that would change the entire battle. Ryan, he called down to the engine room, how much power can you give me if I don't care about safety protocols? There was a pause before Ryan's voice came back through the comm. Captain, that's a dangerous question. If I push the reactor past its limits, we could create an explosion that would take out half this star system. What if we could control that explosion? Jake asked. What if we could aim it? Lisa looked up from her tactical station with wide eyes. Captain, you're not seriously thinking about turning our own reactor into a weapon, are you? Why not? Jake replied. Nothing else we're doing makes sense to these aliens. Maybe it's time to do something that doesn't make sense to us either. In the engine room, Ryan was already running calculations in his head. It was completely insane, but it might actually work. I could overload the main reactor and then vent the plasma through the engine exhaust ports. If I time it right, it would create a directed energy pulse. How directed, Jake wanted to know. Directed enough to hit whatever's directly in front of us when we fire it. Dr. Amy Carter had been listening to the conversation while monitoring the alien attacks. Captain, I've been studying their shield frequencies. If Ryan's energy pulse hits them at the right frequency, it might actually penetrate their defenses. Their shields are designed to stop perfect weapons, Tony added from his station. Our reactor meltdown won't be perfect. It'll be messy and chaotic. Maybe that's exactly what we need. High Admiral Zekhan was becoming frustrated. His fleet had fired hundreds of shots at the small human ship, and it was still fighting back. Worse, some of his own vessels were starting to take minor damage from debris and misfired shots in the confusion. How is this possible? He demanded of his science officer. They are primitives with inferior technology. They should have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes. Admiral, the science officer replied nervously. They are not fighting according to any known tactical principles. Their movements appear random, but they are somehow effective. Our targeting computers cannot predict their next action. Then stop using the computers and fire manually, Zekhan ordered. But that didn't work either. The human ship seemed to know exactly when the aliens were about to fire, dodging at the last possible second in ways that made no logical sense. What the aliens didn't understand was that the human crew had stopped trying to be logical. Lisa was flying the ship based on pure instinct, making decisions faster than conscious thought. Ryan was keeping the engines running on systems that should have exploded hours ago. Tony was predicting alien movements by listening to the background noise in their transmissions, picking up patterns that their own computers missed. Captain, Amy called out suddenly. I'm reading massive energy buildup in the alien flagship. They're charging some kind of superweapon. Jake looked at the main screen and saw the enormous Vectar dreadnought beginning to glow with dangerous light. Whatever they were preparing, it was going to be much more powerful than anything they had used so far. That's it, Jake decided. Ryan, start the reactor overload. We're going to get one shot at this. Starting overload sequence now, Ryan replied. Captain, once I begin this process, we'll have about 3 minutes before the reactor goes critical. After that, we either fire this thing or we all die in the explosion. The Defiance began to shake as its reactor pushed beyond safe limits. Energy readings throughout the ship climbed to dangerous levels, but Ryan's crazy modifications were holding. The backup systems he had jury-rigged were somehow containing forces they were never designed to handle. 2 minutes until critical, Ryan announced. On the alien flagship, Zekhan was preparing to end the battle once and for all. Charge the planet killer weapon, he ordered. We will vaporize this human ship and everything else in a 50-kilometer radius. But as the Vectar superweapon powered up, something unexpected happened. The energy signature was so massive that it interfered with the other Council ships. Their shields began fluctuating, and their targeting systems started giving false readings. Amy noticed it first. Captain, the alien ships are having problems. Their big weapon is causing interference with their own systems. Jake smiled grimly. Then we attack now while they're confused. Lisa, get us in close to that flagship. Are you crazy? Lisa asked. If we get too close when that superweapon fires, we'll be destroyed no matter what our shields are doing. Trust me, Jake replied. Ryan, how much longer? 1 minute until critical, came the reply from the engine room. The Defiance accelerated toward the massive alien dreadnought at full speed. To the Council fleet, it looked like a suicide run, but Jake was counting on their confusion to give him the opening he needed. 30 seconds, Ryan called out. Lisa, spin us around so our engine exhausts are pointing at their flagship, Jake ordered. 10 seconds. Fire everything we've got at their shield generators, Jake commanded. The Defiance's small weapons opened fire on the dreadnought's shield. Projectors. The shots were too weak to penetrate the alien defenses, but they caused small fluctuations in the shield matrix. Now Ryan triggered the controlled reactor breach. For a split second, the Defiance became a miniature star. A focused beam of plasma and energy erupted from the ship's engine ports, carrying with it all the chaotic, unpredictable power of human desperation and ingenuity. The energy beam hit the Vectar flagship just as its shields were fluctuating from the interference of their own superweapon. For the first time in the battle, alien shields failed completely. The beam tore through the dreadnought's hull like paper, causing massive explosions throughout the ship. Zekhan watched in disbelief as his flagship's bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Impossible, he whispered. No primitive weapon should be able to penetrate our defenses. But the beam had done more than just damage the dreadnought. The explosion sent out an electromagnetic pulse that disrupted the targeting systems of every Council ship in the fleet. Suddenly, the aliens found themselves firing blindly, hitting each other as often as they hit empty space. 3 more Council vessels suffered critical damage from friendly fire in the confusion. The perfect military formation that had served the aliens for thousands of years became a liability as ships collided with each other trying to avoid misfired shots. Captain, Tony reported with amazement in his voice. Their entire fleet is in chaos. They're shooting at each other. Jake leaned back in his captain's chair, breathing hard. The reactor pulse had drained most of their remaining power, but it had worked. One human ship had just crippled the flagship of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council was afraid. The bridge of the Defiance was filled with smoke and the smell of burning electronics. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow over everything. Jake Morrison looked at his crew, all of whom were staring at the main screen in disbelief. The massive, alien fleet that had seemed so invincible just minutes ago was now in complete disorder. Report, Jake said quietly. Lisa checked her tactical display with shaking hands. Captain, we've disabled their flagship, and at least 6 other Council ships. The rest of their fleet is scattered and confused. Some of them are still firing at each other. Our status? Jake asked. Ryan's voice came through the comm from the engine room, sounding exhausted. We're running on emergency power only. The reactor is stable but operating at maybe 10% capacity. We've got hull breaches in 4 sections and half our systems are offline. Dr. Amy Carter looked up from her medical station. We've got injuries throughout the ship, but nothing life-threatening. The crew is shaken but alive. Tony was monitoring the alien communications and his expression was one of amazement. Captain, you need to hear this. They're not talking about destroying us anymore. They're arguing about whether to retreat. On the Vectar flagship, High Admiral Zekhan was trying to understand what had just happened. His perfect ship was crippled. His fleet was in chaos, and it had all been done by a single primitive vessel that should have been destroyed hours ago. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "I'm analyzing the weapon they used against us. It appears to be some kind of controlled reactor breach. The energy signature is completely unlike anything in our databases." "That's impossible," Zekhan replied. "No civilized species would use such a crude and dangerous weapon." "That's exactly the point, Admiral," the science officer said quietly. "They're not fighting like a civilized species. They're fighting like desperate animals, and it's working." Around the flagship, other council ships were trying to regroup, but their coordination was broken. For 3,000 years, they had relied on perfect communication and flawless tactics. Now, with their systems disrupted and their confidence shaken, they didn't know how to respond. The Zephyrian mind readers found that human thoughts were too chaotic and unpredictable to follow. The Karathi computers couldn't process tactics that made no logical sense. The Astrani energy manipulators discovered that crude plasma weapons didn't follow the rules they understood. The Nexari hive mind was confused by the individual creativity of the human crew. Jake opened a communication channel to the entire alien fleet. His image appeared on screens throughout the council ships, showing a human who looked tired and battered but far from defeated. "Hi, Admiral Zekhan," Jake said calmly. "I think we need to talk." There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. When his face appeared on the Defiance's main screen, he looked nothing like the confident warrior who had threatened them earlier. "What do you want, human?" Zekhan asked. "I want you to understand something," Jake replied. "My ship is barely holding together. My crew is exhausted. We're outnumbered 200 to 1, and by all rights, we should be dead. But we're not. Do you know why?" Zekhan said nothing. "It's because you made a mistake," Jake continued. "You assumed that because your technology is more advanced than ours, you were better than us. You thought that because you've ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, you always would, but you forgot something important." "And what is that?" the alien admiral asked. "You forgot that being powerful doesn't make you right, and you forgot that sometimes the person who refuses to give up can beat the person who thinks they've already won." Jake stood up from his captain's chair, even though the movement made him wince from his injuries. "My species has a saying, Admiral. We say that it's not the size of the dog in the fight that matters. It's the size of the fight in the dog." "You speak of courage," Zekhan replied. "But courage without power is meaningless." "Is it?" Jake asked. "Then explain to me how one human ship just crippled your fleet." The silence that followed was deafening. Throughout the council fleet, alien commanders were asking themselves the same question. How had this happened? How had their perfect weapons and flawless tactics failed against what they considered a primitive enemy? Dr. Amy Carter stepped forward. "Admiral, you said we're not advanced enough to travel in your space. But maybe advancement isn't just about having better weapons or faster ships. Maybe it's about being able to adapt when things don't go according to plan." Ryan's voice came through the comm system. "Captain, I'm detecting movement in their fleet. Some of the ships are beginning to withdraw." Tony looked up from his communication station. "I'm intercepting messages between the council ships. They're debating whether to continue the attack or retreat. Some of them are saying that destroying us isn't worth the cost anymore." Jake nodded. He could see it in Zekhan's eyes. The alien admiral was realizing that even if his fleet eventually destroyed the Defiance, the cost would be enormous. More importantly, word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would learn that the mighty Galactic Council could be challenged and hurt. "You have a choice to make, Admiral," Jake said. "You can keep fighting us and maybe you'll win, but it won't be the easy victory you expected. Your people will ask why it was so hard to defeat one small human ship. Other species will start wondering if the Council is as powerful as you claim. Or," Jake continued, "you can let us go. We'll return to human space and we'll tell our people what happened here. We'll tell them that we met the Galactic Council and survived. We'll tell them that the galaxy is big enough for everyone." High Admiral Zekhan looked around his damaged bridge. Several of his officers were wounded and smoke was still rising from destroyed control panels. Through the viewports, he could see other council ships in similar condition. "If I let you leave," Zekhan said slowly, "what guarantee do I have that your species won't use this knowledge to challenge us again?" Jake smiled, but it wasn't a cruel smile. "You don't. But that's the point, isn't it? From now on, you'll have to earn respect instead of demanding it. You'll have to prove you deserve to rule instead of just assuming you do." The alien admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke to his fleet. "All council ships stand down, let the human vessel depart." "Admiral?" one of his officers asked in surprise. "The human is correct," Zekhan replied. "Destroying them now would cost us more than letting them go. And perhaps it is time the council remembered that true power comes from strength, not just from the fear of others." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you, Admiral. I hope that someday our species can meet again under better circumstances." As the Defiance limped away from the council fleet, its crew began the long journey back to human space. They carried with them the knowledge that humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and that they had proven themselves capable of standing up to powers far greater than themselves. Behind them, the Galactic Council fleet slowly regrouped. But things would never be the same. Word of the battle spread quickly through space, carried by traders and travelers to every corner of the galaxy. The story grew with each telling, but the core truth remained the same. One human ship had faced the might of the Galactic Council, and survived. The illusion of invincible power was broken forever, and the galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place.